Okay, the SCO. In general, I get the feeling when I see when Putin and Modi and Xi Jinping when they met, do you feel like they're pretty relaxed? They kind of enjoy.
I have said this very same thing on programs. I mean, it's very again a very interesting contrast. You see Western leaders together, and they all look angry. I mean, they always look angry. I mean, even when they put on smiles, you
Mhm,
can sense that they're angry. I mean, look at Macron and Meloni, for
mhm,
example. I mean, it's fairly obvious that they dislike each other. Look at when the Europeans meet with Trump. It's obvious that they dislike each other. I mean, there's tensions between Ursula von der Leyen and Friedrich Merz as well, and everybody knows it. When Putin, Xi, and Modi were together, one senses a certain buoyancy. I mean, they're happy to be there. They're able to talk to each other. They find that they can talk to each other as adults.
mhm.
There isn't this constant, having to always be careful what you say, because if you say something wrong, it'll blow up in your face or anything of that kind. I mean, they were enjoying their discussions. And I think India is on a journey, by the way. I've been saying this for some time. Professor Sachs has been saying for over a year that fairly soon, India, the penny would drop and India would decide that this involvement in things like the Quad was a mistake and that it would try to repair its relations with China. And Modi, I think you could see it. I mean, there was almost a sense of relief finally that he was there in China, able to talk with Xi, able to talk with Putin, the three of them together. What was it? I think it's Chinese people who are saying the dragon, the elephant, and the bear, and you could see it.
Now, the BBC has a lot of reporting about this, but like you said, they always think it's all about the West, right? So that
Yeah,
the three of them together, they put up a show, to show
yeah,
some kind of unity, even though they have differences.
yeah,
It's true, they are still like a border issues between India and China.
yeah.
And they're also always trying to say that the Russian and China is kind of like alliance inconvenience, that it's not going to sustain and stuff like that. I don't think they're trying to put up a show to anybody. I think that they enjoy,
Yeah.
each other's company, and they do have things they need to plan in terms of, how to deal with this tariffs and sanctions and I would say abusive of power, right?
Yes.
That to insert all these powers, forcing countries to do which are the things against their own interest and stuff like that. I think the West are reading too much into what they're doing, don't you think?
Well, they're completely misunderstanding it. I mean, this comes back to what I was saying, that these people in Tianjin, these leaders in Tianjin and Beijing, are living in the present and the
Mhm.
future. We are living in the past. We see everything as part of some great complicated geostrategic game, which is ultimately always about us.
Yeah.
in fact, in
Yeah.
fact, in fact, the Chinese and the Russians certainly. I don't know so much about India here, but the Chinese and the Russians certainly have got to know each other very, very well
Mhm.
in the last 20 plus years,
Yeah.
especially I'd say the last 15. And speaking from the Russian side, they've come to like
Mhm.
the Chinese. I mean, I when I went to Shanghai back in 2017, uh, the person who acted as my host was a Russian businessman who was
Mhm.
working for a Russian bank. He loved being in China,
Mhm.
and the people that he was with, all Russians, loved being in China. They had they were encountering problems
Mhm.
because there were still difficulties in understanding of how each did business.
Mhm.
But I've talked about this many times, but um, but I've also told you how the Russians have always told me, if you negotiate with the Chinese, it can take a very long time. It can
Mhm.
be very difficult. They're very tough negotiators. But when the deal is done,
Yeah.
you can absolutely rely on the Chinese to honor everything that they agree.
Yeah.
And for the Russians, that is incredibly important. So they like it.
Yeah.
They like interactions. They like, I mean, I should say again, it's a while since I've been to Moscow, but Chinese restaurants are starting to open there. They like aspects of Chinese culture. I know there's been exhibitions of Chinese art, and people have gone and been interested in these things. So the West is getting this all wrong.
Yeah.
And the Russians, for Russia, China is a neighbor. It is not, you know, a faraway land. I mean, it may be a huge country, but when you are in Moscow, you're very, very conscious that Vladivostok is part of your country, the same country, and that it is a neighboring country to China. So absolutely, I mean, on the Russian side, this is a long-term thing. Absolutely, it is a long-term thing. Now they're transferring their gas from Europe to China. This is what Power of Siberia 2 is. The point is, this was the gas that used to go to Europe. I mean, Power of Siberia 1 drew from new gas fields. Power of Siberia 2 draws from old gas fields that used to supply Europe, and new Arctic gas fields, which had been earmarked to supply Europe. All of that now is going to China. And there is in Russia a huge sense of relief, because finally we have a partner that we can deal with, not a partner that harasses us, that brings bogus legal claims against us, that conducts silly anti-competition policies against us, that tries to strong arm us into agreeing to third energy packages, which we've repeatedly said we don't want to be part of, that then looks the other way as our pipelines get blown up and then imposes massive sanctions against us. Finally, we have a partner we can work with and we can deal with and we like dealing with, and who is not trying to bully us. I mean, you notice again how careful Xi Jinping was to talk about the question of bullying. Something the Russians are very familiar with, because they've been bullied an awful lot recently. So from the Russian side, there's a sense of relief.
One more thing, the SCO happened is Xi Jinping proposed the creation of a SCO Development Bank. And China already proposed, I mean, there is already an Asian Development Bank, but that's mainly for Asian countries. But this is more broader. Again, now the West will see that as trying to replace the World Bank and IMF, but it's not, right? I think the West always mistake that. It's an alternative. It's not trying to replace anybody, right?
Yes. Well, we believe in competition, except when it's against us. I mean, if you want to, if you're so worried about this Chinese bank, which the Chinese, by the way, have a perfect right to set up. Why is China somehow prohibited from setting up a bank and doing it to facilitate trade and economic relations with other countries? But if you're worried about that, make your own bank better. Improve your lending, your lending conditions, work hard and deliver a better product. But no, this isn't really about China wanting to develop competition and supply alternatives and do these things. It's all about us. It's about replacing our financial system with their financial system. A zero-sum game, which is the one we play all the time, and which the rest of the world is getting very tired of.
Yeah, exactly. I think this zero-sum game, this mentality the West has, they really need to get rid of that. They really need to change the perception. Somehow it's, your gain must be my loss. This kind of a mentality I find it's really not 21st century thinking, I think.
No. So. You're absolutely, but that's exactly the point. I mean, what you are doing what we're doing in the West is that we frame everything around geopolitics,
Yeah.
which you know, has its origins, as I've discussed many times, in the conflicts in Europe, the interstate conflicts in Europe. But I mean, we see everything. We assume everything is part of this chess game,
Mhm.
and every move that is made is part of a chess game, in which the ultimate objective is to win a geopolitical victory. China doesn't think in that way. Its history isn't like that. Anybody who knows anything about Chinese history can see this.